Hello, my name is Jenny Cohn1 and I'm an attorney, election security advocate, and writer. I'm here today to talk to you about America's largest voting machine vendor, Election Systems and Software LLC, commonly known as ES&S. ES&S accounts for 44% of U.S. election equipment. ES&S made some headlines earlier this week. It earned a lot of praise in the headlines for finally announcing, after 15 years, that it's finally going to stop selling paperless voting machines. And the reason why people thought this was a big deal, and it is kind of a big deal, although ES&S really is not worthy for applause particularly, as I'll explain in a minute. But the reason why people thought this was a big deal is because the only way to know if electronic vote tallies have been altered or hacked is to compare a hand tally of the paper ballots and compare it to the electronic tally. So obviously, if you have a paperless voting machine, that makes the machine unauditable, and there's no way to know if the reported electronic outcome is legitimate. But here's sort of the catch. There's no universally accepted definition of paper ballot. And so what this has done is it has enabled ES&S and other vendors and the vendor surrogates to use the phrase paper ballots to misleadingly describe something sort of new. And this new thing is it's a summary card, really, which has a barcode on it. And in ES&S's case, it's an abbreviated summary of the voter's selections. And these are generated, you don't mark them with your hand. They come out of a hackable machine called a ballot marking device. And there are several problems with these new machine marked so-called paper ballots. One of the problems, as I mentioned, that they, at least ES&S's machine marked ballots have barcodes on them. And the barcode is the only portion of this machine marked ballot that's actually counted as your vote. That's a problem because people can't read barcodes. And no, you can't use your cell phone to decode the barcode because the barcodes are proprietary to the vendor, and many jurisdictions don't allow you to bring out your cell phone anyway in a polling place. So they put your votes into a barcode and then they use that that's what's counted as your vote. There's no reason to do this that anyone has been able to identify, no legitimate reason. It just makes our elections non-transparent and makes it what's actually counted as your vote not verifiable. Another problem is the vendors often will come back and say, well, don't worry about the barcodes. We've got this summary text underneath the barcodes that summarizes your selections. Well, here's the problem with that. Because it is a summary text, because it is in an abbreviated format, a very respected a group that's very respected by election security professionals called the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, it came out with a report in 2018 that says that unless voters take notes while they're voting, these abbreviated summaries are virtually unusable in terms of verifying voter intent, which is the whole point. I mean, when you're going to have a machine-marked ballot, it forces voters to actually be able to try to catch any electronic fraud or electronic error on the face of these machine-marked paper ballots. That's not an issue with hand-marked paper ballots. So if they're virtually unusable for doing that, that's a serious problem. There's a third problem with these machine-marked paper ballots from ES&S in particular. And that third problem is that some of the newer systems, and all of these actually are quite new, the whole barcode, machine-marked paper ballots is a relatively new phenomenon the last couple of years. But the newest systems they're called hybrids. And what a hybrid is it combines a hackable ballot marking device and a hackable scanner into a single hackable unit. And the problem with doing that is that, according to experts, these machines are routing your machine-marked paper ballot under the printer head after you've already reviewed and cast it, assuming you review it at all. Sorry, it looks like I have to plug in my phone. Hang on one sec. Hi, okay, so I'm back. So I was talking about hybrid voting systems and ES&S's in particular. ES&S's hybrid system is called the ES&S Express Vote XL, and it also has a hybrid and non-hybrid version of its smaller ES&S Express Vote system. And again, the problem with these is that experts say that they are routing your paper ballot under the printer head after you've inspected it, assuming you inspected it. Apparently most people don't bother, but assuming you did, it's after you've cast your vote, it routes it again under the printer head. And the reason why that's a problem is that means that the machine has the mechanical ability to fill in fraudulent votes on any races that you left blank. Blank races are called undervotes, and there are actually quite a few undervotes in every election. And these machines allow, they have the mechanical ability to fill these in with fraudulent votes. They can be, they're not programmed to do that right now, but a corrupt insider or a hacker, according to experts, would be able to program them to do this. So that's a huge problem. These machines also have a function that's just bizarre called autocast. This is the ExpressVote and the ExpressVote XL. And using the autocast feature, it allows voters to decide whether they even want to inspect the paper ballot for fraud or not. And when you're standing in a long line, many voters probably just want to be done with it and won't review the paper ballot. And it doesn't actually even mark the paper ballot at all until that decision is made, whether to autocast or print review, which means that, again, the machines can be programmed to add fake votes only for those, really an entirely fraudulent ballot. If you're talking about autocast, you can create an entirely fraudulent ballot for the probably many voters who decide not to review their ballot at all. Serious problem, and really I can't think of any good excuse to have an autocast function on these machines. So here's the thing. I think when people hear these technical concerns, they often are discounted because, number one, they don't realize that one vendor has such influence over over election systems throughout the United States. And number two, they assume that these vendors have been carefully vetted, that that someone is guarding the hen house. I don't know why this assumption is out there. Corruption, as we've seen in the past few years, has tainted really every aspect of our government, and unfortunately elections are no different. So here are 10 facts that I think you should know about voting machine vendor ES&S and probably don't know. And I hope that you will consider them if you are considering lobbying for safer equipment, which, if you're going to use equipment at all, should really just be a scanner without a modem, by the way. You don't want a cellular modem in your scanner. For counting hand-marked paper ballots, even better, we would do hand counting of hand-marked paper ballots. So in any event, here are 10 facts about voting machine vendor ES&S. Number one, it has donated $30,000 to the Republican State Leadership Committee since 2013. This is a serious problem. The Republican State Leadership Committee houses the Republican Secretary of State's Committee, which secretaries of state are typically the highest election officials in a state, and that means that they're basically giving money to the people who are making the decisions about what type of equipment to buy and who to buy them from. And we certainly don't want our election officials making decisions about that will affect election security based not on election security, but based on what will benefit them and what will benefit their party politically. That's a problem. It would be bad enough, by the way, if ES&S were donating to both political parties. But as far as I can tell, they've only donated to the Republican Party since 2002. I think back around 2002, anyway, there were some small donations to both parties, but since then it's been the GOP. Number two, in 2018, ES&S hired a large lobbying firm and paid it $150,000 to lobby the Senate and House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. We've been hearing a lot about lobbyists' corruption, and this is a serious problem. And you may have heard earlier this week also that Mitch McConnell has said, I don't think he's just said it this week, but he did say it, repeated, I think, this week, that he is not going to allow any election security legislation to go to the House floor. And this is a real problem. Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon has a really excellent election security bill that would actually ban barcode systems and hybrid systems like the ExpressVote and the ExpressVote XL. But yeah, Mitch McConnell is saying he's not going to let any sort of election security bill come to the House floor before 2020. Number three, ES&S has been accused by New York City of misleading the city about ES&S's scanners' resistance to humidity, and these ES&S scanners failed rather spectacularly during the 2018 midterms in New York City. These are not barcode systems that failed. These are the scanners. And the thing is, scanners, if you're going to use equipment, scanners is really what you want to buy, but you certainly want scanners that can withstand humidity if you live in a humid environment. And apparently, according to the city of New York, that was not the case with ES&S's scanners. I don't know for sure which scanners they are, but ES&S's most popular scanner is called the DS200, which, by the way, they've equipped in some places with cellular modems. I'll talk about that in a minute. If you're going to advocate for any sort of equipment, you want it to be digital scanners without modems, and that can withstand humidity, and you want them to be counting hand-marked paper ballots rather than the machine kind. Number 4, ES&S has had its $50 million contract with New York City criminally investigated in 2010 by Preet Bharara, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. I do not know the outcome of this investigation, but if I find it out, I will let you know. I have looked a little bit. I haven't been able to find the answer. But they were investigated for corruption involving the voting machine vendor and equipment selection process. So this is what I would call a red flag. And yet, by the way, New York City is considering, the chief of the New York City Election Board sat on a secret advisory board with ES&S, which I'll talk about in a minute, and wants to buy more ES&S equipment for early voting. He wants to buy, guess what? The barcode hybrid express vote XL voting systems for early voting in New York City, despite all of this, humidity problems and criminal investigation and such. Number 5, ES&S is having its new contract with the City of Philadelphia investigated by the Philadelphia City Controller. So recently, despite a lot of vociferous opposition from voting rights advocates and election security experts, the City of Philadelphia decided to go ahead and buy the ES&S Express Vote XL hybrid voting system, and that contract is under investigation by the Philadelphia City Controller to see if there were any improprieties or corruption that tainted the selection process, the selection of this particular vendor, ES&S, and of this particular highly expensive system. I forgot to mention that. These, vendors are profit motivated, and these barcode and hybrid systems are a lot more money than just using hand-marked paper ballots and scanners, because when you do these ballot marking devices, you still do the scanner part, but you're just adding on that extra element. So it makes it exceedingly expensive. In any event, ES&S, number 6, has a secret advisory board consisting of election officials who it pays to fly to conferences all over the country and stay at posh hotels and dine in fancy restaurants. Again, highly inappropriate. This was reported in McClatchy, I think in 2018. And there has been some follow-up in the different states. There's been some pressure on these election officials to resign from these boards, but, frankly, the damage has already been done. The relationships have already been forged. In any event, that is another problem with voting machine vendor ES&S. Number 7, ES&S put New York City's election boss, Mike Ryan, on this secret advisory board, and Ryan has attended 9 of these conferences since 2014. I was just in New York City earlier this week with an election security advocacy group called Smart Elections. You can read more about them at smartelections.us. I'm on their outreach advisory board, and we were there trying to persuade the state of New York to not certify the ES&S Express Vote XL hybrid, barcode hybrid, which is currently, that is what they're considering, is whether to certify this new system. I mean, frankly, I think it's shocking that they would even consider it given the experience New York City had with ES&S equipment during the midterms, but in any event, that is what the city of New York is looking at, and frankly, the state of New York, many states throughout the United States are considering these new ES&S barcode and barcode hybrid voting systems. Number 8, ES&S exposed, this is a huge one, they exposed the voting data of 1.8 million Chicago voters around the time of the 2016 election. Major, major security breach. This was discovered by a man named, a cybersecurity investigator named Chris Vickery. He's at UpGuard, and you can read more about it on his Twitter timeline. His Twitter handle is @VickerySec, VICKERYSEC. And the thing is, this database that was exposed, it included not just the voter data, which is really terrible, especially if you're thinking about, Cambridge Analytica and Facebook and how they've used voter data to try to influence voters' opinions, but also the database included encrypted employee passwords for ES&S employees and their employee accounts. And apparently the encryption was strong enough to maybe keep out a casual hacker, but not strong enough to deter a nation state. And of course, we're worried about nation states these days. And in addition, we're worried about corrupt insiders being able to have access to this type of information. So that's a major data breach. Doesn't speak well of ES&S and its cybersecurity hygiene. And by the way, this breach also, although the voter data pertained to Chicago voters, the breach with the employee passwords has implications for the entire country, because ES&S, like I said, accounts for 44% of U.S. election equipment, and it's all over the United States. So if you have, the employee passwords having been compromised, that has significant implications for the integrity of elections in many, many states, not just Illinois. Number 9, ES&S admitted last year, after prior denials, to having installed remote access software in election management systems in 300 jurisdictions it won't identify. So what is an election management system? No, it's not a voting machine, it's not a scanner. It's just as bad, though, to have remote access to it, because what they are, these are the central county, or in some states, state computers that are used to program all voting machines and scanners and ballot marking devices before every election. So if you have remote access to these election management systems, you can obviously cause a lot of trouble if you happen to be a corrupt insider. And the other thing that these election management systems can do, according to Kim Zetter, who actually broke the remote access story, she's a very well-known, nationally recognized cybersecurity journalist who's written for the New York Times, and I think she broke this story possibly in Motherboard, these election management systems also include these central tabulators, which are the centralized county or state machines that are used to aggregate all precinct totals. So obviously having remote access to the central tabulators in 300 jurisdictions creates all kinds of opportunities for malicious mischief. Finally, number 10. ES&S has also installed wireless modems in ballot scanners in Florida, Wisconsin, and Illinois starting in 2015. And by the way, it may actually be in other states. These are just happen to be the states that election security advocates have actually managed to find the wireless modems in. The reason these wireless modems are a problem, if it isn't obvious, is that according to election security, cybersecurity expert Andrew Appel, he's at Princeton University, these modems can enable bad actors to intercept and change vote tallies en route from the precincts to the central tabulators using a small cell tower simulator, like a Stingray. A Stingray is a small device. Many police departments have them, and apparently these can be used to actually intercept and change our vote tallies. So these are some serious problems with voting machine vendor ES&S, and I hope these are things that you will consider if you are either in a position to decide whether to buy or whether to certify ES&S's barcode and barcode hybrid voting systems, or even whether you're considering their scanners, which again, scanners are about as good as you can hope for if you're going to be using electronic equipment, but you certainly don't want them to have modems, so make sure that your scanners don't have modems in them, get it confirmed in writing, and you want to make sure that they can withstand humidity if you live in a humid environment. Thank you very much. If you want to follow my everyday reporting on election security, you can look at my Twitter timeline. I'm at Jenny Cohn1, JennyCohn. I hope you found this helpful. I'll be doing more videos soon. Thank you.